Hey everyone, it is Stephanie here with SK Artistry. I am going to show you guys today, this will be part one of building this bee designed portfolio slash journal, I guess. You can use it however you like, but I really have enjoyed making these and they are absolutely gorgeous. The paper is a digital download pack that I bought off of Etsy, which I will put below in the comments. And the folder is made out of 3 file folders. So I'm doing a voiceover on this as I make it. So you guys just bear with me because I've never made a video on anything like this. So to do this, you're gonna need 3 file folders. And I always start, if you want yours to look like mine, you want a file folder that has the tab to the left, like I've shown in the picture. And you'll want to unfold your file folder. And I fidget around with my stuff here for a minute, so please excuse the fidgeting because my cutting board only goes to 12 inches. So you need this piece to be cut 14 inches from your tab. So from the edge of your tab, you want to measure out 14 inches. If you're like me, I measured out my 12 inches and then I added another 2 inches on. So that's the first step we're going to do here. And if you're ever confused about the orientation of the direction that you're doing something, just lay your piece out like I have with mine and match it to mine, and then you'll know you're doing everything the right way, just in case I misspeak. So I try to write this stuff down for you guys, and now in the video it seems like it's a little small, but you get the point. So that's 14 inches from the tab. So now I have the tab up in the top right hand corner and I'm going to cut 14 inches off my file folder. And I just erase all these pencil marks as I go along. You guys do not have to do the pencil marks at all. I only did it for the video purposes. And now at this spot, we are going to measure to make this what's going to be the spine of our book. So you want, from the flat side, you want to measure over 6.5 inches and 7.25 inches. And like I said, that is from the flat side. So that's our 6.5 and that is our 7.25. So if you guys can tell, I don't use the measurements on my scoreboard. I use an actual ruler because I don't feel like the measurements on this scoreboard are that accurate. And also, in being honest, there's not a lot of measurements on this that have to be right on the money. If you're off a dash or two when you score, it's not going to make a huge difference, except for with this part, the spine. That does matter because it affects how your book edges match up and where you score at the bottom to create your pockets, which you'll see here in a second. Those things matter, but everything else we add to the inside, honestly, you can make that, you have some play with how you do that. So here I just fold on each of those score marks just to show you guys where the spine's going to be. And then we're going to measure 8.5 inches from, I messed up right here. I don't know why I did this. You'll see here in a second, I flip it the right way. And we're going to measure 8.5 inches down from the top. And that is where we're going to score, and that will create our pockets for the book. So I measure it over on that side, and then I always come over closer to the edge so I can line it up easier. So we measure 8.5 here. So this line we're just going to score. And also, most scoreboards are only 12 inches, so you're going to have to score and go as far as you can, and then adjust your folio up and finish your score line. So just get it lined back up. So you can see here, I fold up the bottom, and that is essentially what will create our pockets. So after erasing my pencil lines, I will show you guys this square right here, this little rectangle, I'm sorry. I mark it with pencil just so you guys can see it better, but that's the 2 lines that we scored along with the 8.5-inch score line. You're just gonna cut and remove this piece. And a piece of advice I'll give you right here is when you cut this out, go outside the lines a little bit so your pockets, when they fold up and we adhere those later, you'll have a little bit of a gap. It won't interfere with your spine. So if you cut these right on the lines, then you'll have to go back in and cut another little sliver out. For me, I just go outside the lines a little bit, as you can see here. And then that gives my pockets room. So now, as you can see, this has created the front cover and the back cover along with the pockets for our book. Now, if you have one of these envelope makers punches, you can follow along with this step. If not, it doesn't matter. You can trim these corners however you want. You can leave them square if you want. This is all personal preference. I just like the look of it, so I do punch my pocket flaps as I go, so you can see how that looks. And at this point, we are going to just grab another file folder that has a tab on it, just one of the single tabs to the left or right. And you're going to use that kind of as a template. And you want to line this tab up with the score line that created your pocket. And you're just going to use this as a template to cut out a tab onto your cover of your book. So you'll see here in a second, I'll grab my pencil and draw this in. So you'll want to cut out that piece. And you'll want to cut out this piece. So I use my paper trimmer to get the majority of this line really straight, the straight line, and then when it goes into the curve, I stop and cut it the rest of the way with my scissors. So you can do that, or you can cut it all with your scissors. Either way, it doesn't matter. So we cut that piece off. Now here you'll have to cut out this little piece, and then I'll show you in a second, you'll have to fold up the pocket and cut that same piece off of the corner of the pocket too. So cut there, and then you'll want to cut on the line where it was scored. And then give it a flip and cut off that little piece right there to match it so that you can see the tab. And there you have it. So the front cover and back cover are now completed. So here you're going to want to get another file folder out. And on this part, I choose to use a file folder that has a tab at one of the ends, as you can see here. It's just easier to line those up, because if not, if you cut a square piece, you have to trace the tab part out again. So if you just use a second folder here that has the tab already there, you don't have to do that. There will be a little bit of a gap at the bottom, but that doesn't matter because your pocket's going to cover that, and you'll see here what I'm saying here in a second. But from here, you want to make this piece 6.5. I'm sorry, I'm lying to you. So this one, you want to make it 6.5, but you'll measure at 7 inches first and then 6.5 inches. 7 inches is going to be your cut line, and 6.5 inches is where you're going to score. So you'll see what I'm saying here in just a second. So measure out to 6.5 into 7. And then here at the top, you'll measure at 9 inches and 8.5 inches. 9 inches will be your cut line, and 8.5 inches will be your score line. And these are the only 2 cut and score lines you need for this folder. So I cut at my 7-inch line first. Then we'll cut at our 9-inch line. And now we will score each of these 2 lines. So essentially now we're scoring about a 1/2 inch in from both edges. And this will be the first place that you see it in this video, but you will see this done numerous times throughout the video. After you get both of these lines scored, down in the bottom corner, you will have the corner piece where your score lines have crossed. It's a little square in that corner. And you will want to take your scissors and cut at a diagonal line to cut that square out, as I'm going to do right here. If you cut this at a diagonal line, then when you fold those pieces over to the back, that's what you're going to glue down, and they don't touch in the back. So it makes a really nice meat in the back side for them to both lay nice and flat. So this is going to be the inside pocket of the front cover. Now here, I take a circle punch. If you don't have a circle punch, you don't have to do this step. If you have another shape you want to use, you can. I just eyeball this. You can measure it if you want it to be exact. So I just eyeball this punch right here and do a 1/2 circle punch right there on that edge. And when I go to put this in the folder, as you can see here, I line it up to the top of the folder, not at the bottom, because the bottom there is going to be a little gap, but I would line it up to the top. And then you glue down the bottom half and then around those top 2 edges when we get to that step. But don't glue anything in your folder yet. You're going to wait to do all of that until you've decorated each piece, and I'll explain that later. So now you'll want to get another file folder, and I like to use the piece, well, you need to use a middle file folder here because you want that middle tab if you want your book to look like mine. So here you'll see I still measure everything, and I always double and triple check my measurements. But at this point, I will also use my front and back cover piece as a kind of as a template to make sure that my measurements are good, just in case it's off a smidge. I can adjust it specifically for my measurements for this book. So I line up the tabs and get the edges of them together, and I measure from the edge of the tab to the edge of the spine for this side of the book. Because essentially what you're doing is you're going to create a double spine with this piece, so it helps reinforce your spine. So you measure over 7.5 inches and 7 inches. And as before, 7.5 inches will be our cut line, and the 7-inch mark will be your score line. So I don't really know what I was doing here. I honestly can't tell you. I was probably interrupted by a child who was asking me a question and I was trying to answer and was sidetracked at the same time. So here we go. Moving on. We will cut at our 7.5 inch mark. And here I grab my front cover again and I line those tabs up again. And what you will see is that I'm lining the tabs up, and then instead of using a measurement, I mark where the spine is right there. And I use that kind of as a template to determine where I need to score at. And for me on this piece, it was 6.25 inches from that flat edge right there. But that could be off like literally a line or two. So if you want to do the same thing and use yours, you just want to make sure you score to where the spine of this isn't as thick as your other spine, because it needs to lay inside of it, if that makes sense. So like if my other spine was like a full inch thick, then I would only want this spine to be like, you know, somewhere between 3/4 of an inch and a full inch. I wouldn't want it to be a full inch, because you need to make sure that it's a little shorter so they don't interfere with each other. So now I'm measuring 8.5 inches from the top, and we're going to score at 8.5 inches, and that's going to create the pocket for this piece, for the flat piece. So we'll score from 8.5 inches from the top. And this rectangle right here is going to be another piece that we cut out. And as I've said before, do the same thing where you cut it out a little wider than the pencil marks, a little wider than your score lines, just so you give yourself a little bit of a gap. If you guys see what I'm doing here with my cutter, I always am scared that I'm going to overshoot my cut. So like I cut close and a little bit more and a little bit more until I'm like really close to the corner. And then if I have to, I'll still just use my scissors to do the last little cut. I just don't want to overshoot on my cutting. So there is that. And now you will see that the bottom of this will fold up and make our pocket, and I will punch the edge of this pocket again. And this middle piece here will fold up like that and will be a second spine, and it kind of helps reinforce our first one. So I will get the book back together and show you where we are at so far. So here you have your front and back cover. Now you have the flap that's going to be behind your signatures, and the pocket that will be adhered in the front. So the next step of what we're going to do is we are going to make the pocket that goes on this flap. So for this right here, you need a piece that is essentially a rectangle that does not have any tabs on it. So I'm measuring this piece to see how wide mine is, so I can, like I said, adjust my measurements if I need to. But this piece is usually 7 inches by 9 inches. So I'll cut my tab off of here. So I make this a flat piece. And then I'll cut a 7 by 9 section. So I say there in the caption that you want a 6.5 by 8.5, but hold on, maybe that is right. Maybe I'm wrong. I thought this piece was 7 by 9. Let's see what I do, everyone. Nope. Okay, so I do 6.5 by 8.5. So I know before I have done 7 by 9 pieces, but so we're gonna do a 6.5 by 8.5 piece, and then we'll score a 1/2 inch in all the way around, approximately a 1/2 inch. This is another place where you score at, it really doesn't matter. So, and you can make this pocket as wide as you want. I make it almost the full width of the back piece, as you'll be able to see here in a second. The only thing that shows is really the tab and a little sliver of the back piece, but you can make this pocket thinner if you want. If you want it just wide enough to fit a tag in, then you would, want to score it at like 4 inches instead of the 6.5. So here I just mark where I'm going to score it based off of the back piece. So again, just using this back piece as my template, and it ends up being about 1/4 of an inch to a 1/2 inch all the way around. So, well, not all the way around, on 3 sides. You don't want to score your top side. So I measure it just to tell you guys, but like I said, I knew that's where I was going to score anyways based off of my back piece. So it ends up being about 1/4 of an inch to a 1/2 inch in on those 3 edges. So you'll score both sides and your bottom. And I measure this for you guys. Again, if I wasn't doing this video, I just eyeball this and get it somewhere between 1/4 of an inch to a 1/2 inch, because the bottom of this pocket is hid by the flap that makes the envelope portion of your folder. So you don't see the bottom of this anyways. And really, you don't even have to. If you wanted to just cut that shorter and you didn't want to glue it at the bottom, you don't have to, but I like to do it. I feel like it just gives it gives the bottom of this pocket an actual bottom. It's not just open to the envelope. So we score all 3 sides. We'll get rid of these ugly pencil marks. And then, same as before, we will cut off these corners. And we cut them at an angle. You can just cut that square out perfectly if you want to, but then your corners overlap a little bit and it creates some bulkiness. So this is how I cut my corners, and I reduce that bulkiness in the corner. So you'll see here, if you fold on all 3 of your score lines, get those pieces folded back, that just fits right here. And then when you affix that to your folder, you'll see the flap folds up and hides the bottom. So again, you'll want to do a 1/2 circle punch right here. You don't have to if you don't want to, or if you can't, or you can manually cut it out. You can, again, eyeball this, or you can measure where you want it to make sure it's center. Since I eyeballed the first one, I just kind of measured this one out to show you guys. If I measure it out, I just put a little pencil mark and just line up my hole punch with it to know that that's my center. And we just do our little 1/2 circle punch, and there you have it. So that piece will go in there all nice and snug. And I make it level at the top, not at the bottom. And then when we affix it, that bottom piece will fold up, and as you can see, you won't even be able to see the bottom. So now I show you how it goes in the book. So the spines would line up like so. That would go there, and your front pocket would be in the front. So you would have, now you have your front and back cover, the pocket for the front, the flap that's behind the signatures with its pocket, and then you fold it over. The only thing left to do is to create the pocket that goes on the back of this flap. Here you have a couple different options. You can really do this however you want as well. So I'm showing you here, you could use this scrap piece and you can make your pocket out of that. The reason I choose to use the other half of my middle cut folder. So you want to make sure when you cut any of your other pieces out, you don't cut it out of this piece if you want your pocket to look like this. So I take the piece that was from the other half of my folder with the tab in the middle, and I like to center this right here and make a pocket that lays like this. So that's how I like for the pocket to look now. And you can do it any way you want. If you wanted the pocket to face the other way and you wanted the opening to be to the inside of the folio, you could do that as well. But this is how I like mine. So for this piece, I want my pocket to be about 5 inches deep. So I measure 5.5 inches from the edge of the folder, from where like the 2 tabs are. So I'll measure 5.5 inches, and I'll also measure 5 inches because we're going to score all the way around this one, a 1/2 inch in. So there's my 5 inches and there's my 5.5 inches. And then I'll measure in 1 inch and 1.5 inches on each side for the top and bottom. 1 inch will be my cut line and the 1.5 inches will be my score line. So I'll repeat the same thing down here. Measure in 1 inch for my cut line and 1.5 inches for my score line. So now I will go through and cut on all my cut lines. So at the 5.5, and both of my 1 inch lines. And then I'll go around and score at the other 3 lines. And like I said, those now those will essentially be about a 1/2 inch in from your edge. And as you can see here, you'll be able to see when I score that I'm not exactly on where I measured at a 1/2 inch. See, I'm a little to the left of it, but it doesn't matter for this pocket. If this pocket shows a little more at the top or bottom, I just make sure that I center it when I put it on. So now I score that one and score the final one, and we'll cut the corners off. We'll fold all 3 of these edges in where we scored them. Now, at this point, we've made all the pieces that we need for this portfolio. So I go through and burnish all of my edges at this point. So you'll just get a burnishing tool or a bone folder or something that you have laying around, and make sure you push out all these edges and make them nice and flat. Doing this steps really helps keep everything laying down better, especially when you go to glue it in. So as I was saying, for me, this is part 1 of creating this folio / journal. I'm showing you guys how to create what's going to be the core of the book, but I do not glue or put any of these pieces together until I have put all of my paper on and until I have finished all my edges. I will tell you, it makes it so much easier. So if you just absolutely can't wait and you want to glue all this stuff down, you can. but then cutting pieces to put your paper in and aging your edges, if you choose to do that, is just going to be a lot more difficult. So I will do a part 2 to this video where I do show how to measure out the paper and cut the paper so that you use these pieces as a template. And that's the other key, is that if you don't glue everything together right now, you can use all of these pieces that we just burnished as the templates for your paper. But if they're all glued in and they're all put together, then you have to measure everything out for your paper by hand. And let me just tell you, that's not fun. So I'll show you again where everything goes all put together. So you have your front and your back cover. You have your front pocket put in. You'll have the piece that makes the flap. You'll line up the spines. When it comes time, you will glue that down. Not yet though. Then this pocket will be glued inside of here. That will be glued down to create a pocket. You'll flip it over and your back pocket piece will be on the back of your flap. So it will be centered right there. So that's how this would look when it is all put together. But like I said, if you like, and I'm showing you here, you can flip the pocket to face the other way if you want. It's up to you. I like it facing out the other way. But if you would like to, this is where you want to antique or distress all of your edges before you start doing anything else. So I show you here, my next step is I get my little tool out and I get my ink pad out and I go through and I distress all of my edges. So for this one, I'm using Ranger Distress ink and I just dab on there and then I literally swipe all my edges and distress them. This is a very time-consuming and tedious process, but it really adds that like extra, it just makes it look really nice whenever it's all finished. It just finishes it off very nicely. And it depends on the paper that you're going to use to decorate it too. Like if I was going to do like a colorful book with like rainbow designs and stuff, then I would probably use a colorful ink pad. I wouldn't use this aged distressed ink, but I would still do something to the edges. So that is it. I distress all my edges and then we are going to do part 2 to this video so that I can show you guys how to measure out and cut the paper. And here I'm showing you like just getting in that little cutout right there. If this was glued down and it was already put together, that would be so much harder to get in there and get that piece aged. So there you have it, everyone. That is the core to making your book. And if you guys stay tuned in the next day or two, I will get the video made and posted of decorating this and how that goes. If you guys have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them below in the video. And I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. And if you did, please like and subscribe. And hopefully I see you guys around here again soon. Enjoy.